Welcome to Lab 18. In this lab, we'll try to implement MVC with Angular. Now, in this lab, we will not be discussing about the basics of Angular. My suggestion is to go and watch the videos of Angular from JavaScript and jQuery questions and answers video series. And this is a very compulsory prerequisite, because if you try to watch this video without watching those videos, there is a high possibility you won't be able to follow the same. So my suggestion is first go and watch the Angular videos and then come back to this video. Now, in order to understand Angular, what we will do is we'll take the same customer application what we have created till now, and we will go and add one more extra field to that application called as customer amount. This customer amount field indicates how much the customer has bought from us. Okay, so over here what happens is the end user goes and he puts in the customer name, the customer code 1001, and he can also go and put in the customer amount. Now we would like to also go and add some very nice behavior to this customer amount, saying that okay, if the customer buys above 100 from us, he is a very good customer and we would like to track him by some color coding. But if the customer is buying equal to 100 and less than 100, I would like to track him with some other coloring code. Okay, so for example, if he just puts equal to 100 or less than 100, the color is red. But the time he goes above 100, like 101 or must be 1000, the color becomes blue. So we would also like to go and put some color coding to this customer amount, so that we can get an indication that what kind of customer is this. And also we would like to go and display this field down below in the table here. So as soon as the customer goes and enters all these values and he clicks on add customer, I would like to go and display this record down below, but I would also like to go and display this 1000 value in the table below. So when he goes and says add customer, I would like to go and add these values to the database, as well as I would like to go and display the data inside the table here. And also when it goes and displays the data inside the table, I would like to display that color coding as well. So for example, now if I say a Raju, and if I let's say 7890, and if I say 10 here, now you can see the color coding is red, the amount is 10. So when I do add customer, I would like to go and add these values to the database, as well as they should be displayed down below in the grid with the color coding. So this whole thing we want to achieve by using MVC with Angular. Now, because we want a new field on our screen, right, the first logical step would be to go and add a new field in the TBL customer table, right? So let us go and open this TBL customer table in the design mode. So let me go and open this TBL customer in the design mode. So over here I'll say customer amount. Now because this is an amount field, it indicates a financial value. So the best data type in SQL Server for it is money, right? So money has high precision and it is meant specifically to store financial values. So we're going to go and add a new field here called as customer amount, and the data type is money. Now the next logical step would be to go and add a new property in the customer class called as customer amount, so that we can go and map this customer amount with the customer amount field in the database, right? So let me go and create a new property here, and this property we will put the data type as decimal, because there we have the money data type, right? So we don't have any kind of money data type as such in .NET, so we can use the decimal here, and the property name would be customer amount. So now that we have added the field in the database, we have added the field in the model, now it is time to go and add field in the UI, right? So remember our UI was enter customer.cshtml. So this was the UI, where we were going and entering the customer name, customer code, clicking on the submit button. So now in this UI, we need to go and add one more field here called as the customer amount. Now Angular runs on the client side. It's a JavaScript framework. It uses JavaScript language internally, and the best friend of JavaScript is HTML. So these HTML helper classes are very good, they are nice, but really if you want tight integration with Angular and or any other JavaScript framework, then my suggestion is to go and use pure HTML and not HTML helper classes. And by using pure HTML, remember, you can work very closely with the designers, because when designers go and import the screen in front page or probably in Dreamweaver, they won't be able to interpret these server-side tags, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and change all of these text boxes to HTML controls, rather than using this HTML helper classes. So let us first start with the customer name here. So let me go to toolbox. So I'll say view toolbox. So let us drag and drop this text box here. And what we'll do is, for now, we will keep the same naming convention. Means we'll keep the name as customer.customer name. Okay. So we'll keep the same naming convention at this moment to avoid any kind of issues on the server side. Okay. And also here I'll say view toolbox. This is customer code, right? We have not deleted the validation error messages, so let's keep those at this moment where they are. Control C, Control V. Customer code. And in the same way, I will go and add one more field here. Okay, and this field I will name it as customer amount, and this will connect with the customer amount property of our customer class. Great. And also let me go and make these IDs proper here. So this is customer name, this is customer code, this is customer amount. Great. So once you run the application, you would see such kind of a screen here, with customer name, customer code, customer amount, and then below we have the table here. For now, the table will not load, because we have added a new field, but we need to still do a lot of changes, right? So that's fine. But at this moment, we have added a new field and I can see the text box here, and that is good, right? But now let us discuss a couple of things here. So now the first question which should come to your mind is, why do we need Angular here? The way we had mapped customer code and customer name previously, remember, by using $.get and $.post, why can't we just go and map the customer amount? Why do we need Angular here? So let us try to analyze. So we have the HTML UI here with customer name, with customer code and customer amount. This HTML UI is filled via JSON, and this JSON data is emitted via the MVC controller, and the controller uses the customer class model internally, right? So it creates the object of the customer model, sends this JSON data, and the JSON data is attached to the UI. Now let us concentrate on the coordination part of JSON data and the UI. So the JSON data is sent from the server, and that JSON data will be displayed on the UI. Now, in order that this JSON data is displayed on the UI, we need to go and write some kind of a JavaScript code, right? We need to write some kind of a mapping code, some kind of a gel code which will bind the JSON data and the HTML UI. Now, if you remember, right, in the previous part of the application, when we binded the customer name and customer code, we wrote binding code for the table. We wrote binding code for the text boxes, right? So we need to write some kind of a binding code, some kind of a mapping code which will bind the JSON properties with the text box or with the UI properties of your HTML. And on the top of it, if you have some kind of a transformation logic, that logic also has to be written in that JavaScript code. Transformation logic means, for example, we had a customer amount here, so we want to display the customer amount as well as we want to display some color over there. So that again, this kind of a color logic, enable disable logic also has to be written in this JavaScript code. So summarizing, I have a HTML UI which you can call it as a view. I have the JSON data, which you can call it as a model. And then I have some kind of a JavaScript logic, which will connect this view and the JSON data. Now, a lot of people term this view as presenter. Some people term this view as view model. Some people term this view as controller. So everybody has his own way of saying that what this connection logic is, right? For now, I will term it as whatever. Whatever code that connects the UI, that is a view, and the model is that JavaScript code. So I'll just name it whatever rather than naming it view model or presenter and controller and causing more confusion. I will just say that this is that whatever code which connects the view and the model. Now close your eyes and think for a moment. If you have, let's say, 50-60 UI elements, 50-60 properties, then you need to write this mapping code all over your UI. So some mapping code is in this event, some mapping code is in that event. And second, we cannot reuse this mapping code as well. Means, for example, if I write a mapping code, customer name in enter customer.cshtml, I don't know how I can use this mapping code in some other view, right? And second, over that, if you have transformation code, again, that is scattered all over. So how about this? If we can go and create a JavaScript class, some kind of a class, where we can centralize this binding and mapping code. So we have the view and the model. If we can go and create a JavaScript class, where we can go and centralize this mapping and transformation code, then that would make things much better, right? So this whatever code which connects the model and the view, if we can put it into a JavaScript class and centralize it, we have a better architecture over there. And that's what exactly Angular does. Angular is a MVW framework. It helps us to create that whatever class. So the first step is we need to go and reference the Angular files in our project. We need to go and reference the Angular JavaScript files in our project. So click on View, click on Solution Explorer, and go and invoke your Manage NuGet packages. So click on Manage NuGet packages, go and search for Angular online, and you should get something called as Angular Core. Install that package. So once you have installed the package, what happens is in your scripts folder, you should get the following Angular files. You should get angular.js, you should get angular mean.js, and you should get angular mean.js.map. So the first thing is, let us go ahead and drag and drop the angular mean.js file on the UI. So let us go and drag and drop the angular mean.js file. If you wish, you can also drop the angular.js file. Let us do like this. Let us drop angular.js file so that we can also debug, right? Angular mean.js file is a compressed file. So if you see angular.js file, it is a very nice, well commented file, and with all the white spaces, with all the proper indenting. And if you see angular mean.js file, it is a compressed file with no comments at all. And the main purpose of angular mean.js file is for production because it minimizes our size, right? But during development, definitely we want angular.js file because we want to see the comments, we want to debug if you want, right? Great. So we have referred the angular.js file. So the next step is we need to go and create that class, that JavaScript class. Now remember that the way we have a class keyword in C#, we do not have anything in JavaScript. So in JavaScript, in order to create a class, we need to write a function. So if you want to create a class here, it's a function at the end of the day. Remember that JavaScript is an object-based language. So it does not have like keywords like class. It does not have a real inheritance. It does not have polymorphism as such. Okay, so let us go ahead and put a script tag here, and let us go and create a JavaScript class, which is nothing but at the end of the day a function. And let us name this class as customer view model. Why customer view model? Because this class will connect that JSON data, the JSON model, and your HTML UI. Now somebody would like to name this naming convention as customer presenter. Somebody would like to name this class as customer controller. I just like this word view model because this code here will actually connect the view and the model. So it's all up to you that what kind of naming convention you want to put here to this class here, but I have just kept it as customer view model. So now if this is a class here, I would like to go and create an instance of this class. I would like to take that instance and bind it with my HTML UI. And also the binding of the instance with the UI has to be scoped. In other words, for example, let us say that I create the object of customer view model and I would like to attach that instance with a complete HTML, like a public instance. Or probably I would like to take that instance and bind it with a particular div tag. So I also want that with the instance creation, I also want to do scope management of that instance. And all of these powers are provided by Angular. Angular has the ability to not only bind the object to a UI or to do mapping, but it also has the ability to create an instance of the class and bind it with a certain scope of the HTML UI. Now, in order that your class gets those powers, it has to ask from Angular. It has to say Angular that, okay, Angular, give me the power of scope management. Okay, Angular, give me the power of HTTP services, right? So your customer view model class should now ask Angular to give the power of scope management. And that is done via using $scope. So the time I put here $scope, this means that your class is asking Angular.js to give the power of scope management. So now, if this is a customer view model class, then the customer class should have properties. It should have customer name property, it should have customer code property, it should have customer amount property, etc. Right? Now, because the way we do not have a concept of a class in JavaScript, then we don't have the concept of the properties as well inside the JavaScript class. So here what we can do maximum is we can go and create a JSON object which actually has a customer structure with those three properties. So the maximum what we can do here is we can go and create a customer JSON object, right? And we can put those three properties here: customer code, customer name, and customer amount. So we don't have a concept of properties. So what we are doing is we are creating an encapsulated JSON object inside the customer view model class. And one more important point I want to stress here, this JSON object is attached with this scope here. You can see here I'm saying $scope.customer and then the structure of the JSON. Now remember that this class is not a normal class. This class is a view model class. So definitely it will have all the properties of the model, plus it will also have the properties of the view. So at this moment we need to add one more property here: customer amount color. Remember, depending on the amount, we also want to display the color. So that becomes a property. Remember, view model is equal to all the properties of the model plus all the properties of the view. So we have all the three properties of the model, which we have already put here. And also we have one more property which is added here of the view model. And this property, that is customer amount color, will be calculated inside this class. So all the logic of checking if the amount is greater than 100, then the color should be this. If the amount is less than 100, the color should be this. All that logic, all that transformation logic will go inside this customer view model class. So great. We have a customer view model class, and the customer view model class has customer code property, customer name property, customer amount property, etc. So if this is a class, it has properties as well as it has methods and function. So let us go and create a very important function here called as getColor. Now again, you create a function, you create an object, you create a property, whatever, right? At the end of the day, it has to belong to that scope. Okay, so I'm going to say here $scope. I'm going to go and create a function here called as getColor function. Now what does this function do? This function actually takes in the amount and it returns a red color or a blue color. Okay, so actually this takes in amount here, and depending on this amount, so if the amount is 0, right, it's going to just return nothing. So return nothing. If the amount is greater than 100, it's going to return blue. So if the amount is greater than 100, it's going to go and return blue. or else he is going to return red. So this is a function which I would need again and again. So you can see here I've created a very simple function here called as getColor, which actually takes in amount and returns a blue color if the value is above 100, if the amount value is above 100, or else it returns a red color. So nice. So we have a customer class here, a customer view model class here, and this customer view model class has properties and it has function. Now it is time to go and create the object of this customer view model class and bind it with all these text boxes here. So how do we do that? But now again, the object creation of view model is not straightforward. So the way we had to create class and properties in a very strange and cryptic way, in the same manner, the object creation process is a bit typical and strange here. So let us try to understand that why this object creation process is so typical here. Now if you look at Angular is a binding framework. It binds the view model object with the HTML UI. Now if you create a standalone view model object, that would be injustice and incompatible with the hierarchical UI like HTML. Because if you look at HTML, HTML has the main HTML tag, then we have the body tag, and then we have the div tag must be, and then we have the form tags. So the complete HTML UI is hierarchical. So if the HTML UI is hierarchical, then even our view model should be in a hierarchical manner, or else, this mapping won't be proper, right? So in Angular, they have a concept of application and controllers. So in Angular, what you do is, if you want to create a view model object, you have to create a controller, and all these controllers belong to an application or app. So at the left hand side now we have app, and then we have a lot of controllers, and in the same way at the right hand side we have HTML UI, which is hierarchical. So now this mapping would make more sense, right? So in other words, if you want to go and create an object of this view model, what you have created, right, the customer view model class, you have to first go and create an app, and then inside that app you need to go and register the view model object in a controller. So let us go ahead and create the app object. So you can see, in order to go and register an app, you have to say angular.module my app, and then inside this app we are going and registering our customer view model class as a controller. You can see now this code here, these two lines of code need to execute as soon as the HTML runs, right? So it cannot be a part of this class here. So this class is something outside, and these two lines of the code should run as soon as the HTML gets initialized or the HTML runs. So these two lines of code actually have to be outside the customer view model class. So I've done that. So you can see here. So what these two lines of code are doing is, first, the first line of code is going and creating an app. So this is actually going and creating an app, and this line here is actually going and registering the view model object in the controller, right? Great. So we are all set here. Very nice. So now the next thing is, we need to go and take this customer view model class and start attaching it with the appropriate body element or div tag or form tag, so that the necessary scope can be defined. So at this moment, if you see, we want to go and map this customer view model properties with these text boxes here, right? So remember, we had created 3 text boxes, so we have to go and map with these text boxes, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go and create a small div tag here. So I will go and create a div tag. I will enclose this form as well as the button inside this div tag, right? So to this div tag, we want to go and apply this customer view model class, right? So the first thing is, we need to go and define the app, right? So somewhere on the body, I will go and define saying, okay, to this body, I'm going to go and define that, go and apply my app to the body, and to this div tag I would like to go and apply the controller. So I will say here ng-controller, and the name of the controller is customer view model. Now let me talk more about this ng-controller. So as I've said that this ng-controller will take this customer view model and create an instance, and it will bind up that instance with this div tag. So the scope of the instance is only for this div tag and not outside it. So this customer view model instance, cannot be accessed anywhere else. So it is only very much private, or you can say it is very much constrained, to this div area here. Now we have defined that the customer view model will tie up with this div instance, but we have not defined that where exactly the customer code, customer name and customer amount will get tied up, right? So we also need to go and specify, where each one of these properties will get tied up. So I will go here, I'll say that, okay, this is the text box here. So the first text box will get tied up with ng-model. So that's the tag which will help you to tie up the properties with the UI element. So here I'll say tie up the first property, that is customer name, with this text box. Then tie up the second property, customer code, with this text box, and tie up the third property, so ng-model again, with this so is equal to customer amount. Great. So we have specified that the customer view model will tie up with this div tag, and we have also specified where each one of the properties will get tied up. Nice. Now we have one more property here called as the customer amount color, and this customer amount color actually changes as soon as you go and change the customer amount. In other words, if somebody goes and types amount in this text box of customer amount, then depending on the value of the customer amount, we need to go and change the customer amount color, or we need to go and set the customer amount color. So what we have to do here is we have to say that keep watching this property here, customer.customerAmount, and as soon as the property changes, then we need to go and do the following. So over here we will say that basically as soon as somebody goes and changes the customer amount, then I would like to go and set the customer amount color. So I would like to go and set the customer amount color property, and this amount color property will be set by using this $.getColor function. If you remember right, in this $.getColor function, when we go and pass the amount, so over here I will say that whatever is typed in the customer amount, go and pass that value to this function here, and this function will return that it has to set the blue color, it has to set the red color, whatever it is, right? So if you remember right, this getColor function, it had that logic which will help you to set as the blue color or the red color. So as soon as the customer amount property changes, what I'm doing here is I'm going and calling the getColor function, passing him the customer amount, and whatever value comes out, it is actually going and updating the customer amount color property. Nice. Now as soon as the customer amount color property changes, right, what we would like to do is we would like to take that value and set the background color of this text box, right? So what we can do here is we can go and apply a style to the customer amount text box here. So we can say here, okay, here is a style here. You can see I've created a style, and what this style says is that the background color will actually come from the customer amount color. So whatever comes in the customer amount color will actually get set to the style here, and the background color of the amount will change. Okay. Great. So I think we are all set now here. Let us go and run this application. So let me do a Control F5. Let us see what happens. We have still not completed the application. Remember, when we click on the button, we have to go and add, we have to display on the grid. So that is all there definitely. But at least, let us go and check, if the values, what we are putting in the text box, if that is working or not, if the color is changing or not, etc. So in order to go and invoke the enter customer, we have to say customer/enter. So there it is. So let us see. So we go and type the name, then we go and type the customer code, and now the time we go and type the amount, we expect the color to change. You can see the color is changing now. So if the color is, let us go and see the logic here. So what the logic says is, so there the logic is. So you can see here, if the color is less than 100, you give the red color, and that is definitely happening. But the time I go more than 100, 101, you can see the color is changing as blue. So you can see now how this customer view model class is having all that logic which will help us to encapsulate the whole view model thing, the view thing, right? Nice. But now the next thing is, as soon as I click on the add customer, I want all these values to go and get posted to the MVC controller, and the MVC controller should call the entity framework and add these values to the database. And once they have added the values to the database, I would like to go and load the grid below, right? So a lot of work still is pending. That's fine. So in order to do that, the first thing what we have to do here is, so basically, again, when I click on the add button, right, I would like that the logic of the add should also be going through the customer view model class. So the way the customer view model class has the customer code property, customer name property, it has the behavior of the customer amount color. In the same way, what I want here is, I want that it should have an add function, right? So I'll say here $scope.add. So I would like to go and write some kind of a function here, this add function, which will actually go and make a call to the server to add data, right? So you can see now how this customer view model class is acting like a bridge between the UI and your server. Now from this add function to make a server call, we can either use $.get and $.post, what we discussed in the previous part of the videos. But because this video is very much specific to Angular, what we'll do is we will use the Angular HTTP service. Okay, so we want that this class should be empowered with HTTP services. So again, remember, as I've said, the time you say that you have a class and the class wants powers from Angular, right, it has to actually say $ and ask for the service. So again, I want to say here, yes, I want to go and use the $HTTP service of Angular. So you can see here, I have said that I want the $HTTP service. So the way I said I want the scope management service, in the same way I'm saying I want the $HTTP service. So by using this $HTTP, now I can make a call to my server. Now on the controller side, the method which actually does the submit is, so let us revisit it. So if you remember, right, on the customer controller side, we had a nice method here called as the submit method. So this submit method, or the submit action, I will say, actually goes and takes up the customer data and adds it to entity framework. So what we'll do is we'll go and call the same submit method from the $HTTP service. So let us go back here. So over here, I will say that yes, make a call to the server by using the $HTTP service. Okay, so there is a copy pasted code there, but don't worry, I'm going to go and explain you everything. So what here we are saying is the following. Okay, let me go and remove all this. This is all complicated. Okay, let me make it simple. So here we say that, okay, make a call using $HTTP service, right? The method is post. The data what we are sending to the server side is $scope.customers. So this is the data, right? So remember, this customer object is what we want to send on the server side. So customer, And what is the URL where it will submit? It is submit. And once it is successful, so once it is .success, then we would like to go and load the customer collection from the from the server, right? Great. So you can see here $HTTP service, method is post, data is this customer object. Remember that when you type on the text box, it is going to go and update this object here, right? So I'm sending this object here and the URL is submit. And once it is done, I'm going to say yes, .success. So over here, so once this method is posted, this action is posted, I'm going to say .success, and in the success I will go and load the collection of customer. Okay, great. Now we also need to go and revisit the submit action of the customer controller, because at this moment, the data what is getting passed in this submit action via this $HTTP service is a pure JSON data. You can see here the method is post and the data is $scope customer. Now this customer is actually a pure JSON data. So let us go to the submit action. Let us go to the customer controller here. So over here now we don't need to use this request.form because it is a pure JSON data. Automatically it will fill the customer object and pass it in this action. So we don't need to say request.form anymore here. Now there is one more final step which is pending. So we have created this add function or the add method which belongs to the customer view model class, right? But this add function has to be called on some button click on some event, right? So what we'll do here is let us go and call this add method in this button on click event. Okay, now remember that because this add method belongs to a Angular class, right? So we cannot call like this. We cannot say on click and we cannot say here add like this. That will not work. So for that, we need to go and use the ng events. So we have to say here ng click, and on this click go and call the add. Now that will work. Okay, and one more thing what you need to remember is that this button should be a part of this ng controller tag. In other words, it should be enclosed inside the ng controller tag. So yes, it is. So that is good, right? So let us go ahead, let us do a control F5. Let us see that if this thing works and does it insert into database, right? So let me do a control F5. So let us say here test Nepal, because at this moment I'm in Nepal. So INV 1001 and 100, and let me click on add customer. Now you can see here that I have added the customer. It is not showing first thing in the grid below because we have to still do a lot of things over here, but my expectation is that inside the SQL server it should actually go and insert the record, and yes, it has. So that is very nice. That is great, very nice. Now we need to do a couple of improvements on the screen here. The most important improvement is that basically when I go and type here the customer code and I type the amount and I click on add customer, what happens is the screen stands as it is. In other words, at the back end, definitely he has gone ahead and he has added the record in the database, but the screen is just standing as it is. What I want is I should click on add customer and this whole thing should get cleared off and should be displayed on the grid down below. So let us go step by step. The first thing is we would like to go and clear the screen. So let us go back to our code. So let us go here back to our code. Now in order to go and clear the screen, what we have to do is we have to just go and clear these properties, right? So we have to just go and clear the properties of this object, because this object is binded with the UI. So if you change this object values, it will change the text box values. If you change the text box values, it will actually change these object values here. So once you click on add, you click on submit, everything is done. After that, in the success, I would like to just go ahead and clear all the properties of the object. So if I clear the properties of the object, it will go and clear the text box values. Now also when we click on add here, remember it returns a customer collection. So once we click on submit, it goes and adds it to the database by using entity framework, and after that it goes and return back a customer collection from the database. So that customer collection we would like to go and bind to the grid and display all the data inside the grid here, right? So what we'll do is we'll go and create one more property here called as customers. So customer is for individual records, and $scope.customers is for multiple records. So at this moment I will keep the structure unknown, so I'll just keep it as it is at this moment. But as soon as the ad is clicked and the the posting is successful, I would like to go and set that customers to the data what is coming from the server. And remember, this data what is coming from the server, at the end of the day, this data is actually a collection. So remember that this data what is coming from the server, right, is actually a collection. So if you see here, when you actually click on submit, whatever customer collection comes from the server is actually customers, right? So I've said that. Now this customers, what has come here, I want to go and bind it to my table here, right? So first thing is, because we are not using the $.get and $.post, right? So this code here now does not matter. So I'm going to go and delete this code here because this code currently is of no use as such, right? Good. Now remember that this customers collection belongs to the customer view model. So if you want to access this customer collection inside that table, you need to be inside the scope of customer view model. In other words, this table here has to be inside this scope of ng-controller, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take this div tag here what I have. So this div tag what I have here, I'm going to take this div tag and place it outside the table, right? So with that, what happens now is this table becomes the part of this div tag. So now it can go and access the customers collection, because if anybody wants to access any properties of a customer view model object, it has to be inside that scope. So good. So now this table is inside that scope. I will delete this status at this moment from here. Nice. So we need to go and add one more column here in this table, first thing, called as customer amount. And then we need to say here that go and start looping. So we need to say here that go and start looping through all the customers, right? So you can see here I'm saying here ng repeat. This ng repeat, what it does is it will actually go and repeat this tr tag until all the records of the customers collection is looped. And then I will say here inside this td, go and display first thing. So go and display customer code, right? And customer name and customer amount. Nice. So let us go and run this application here. So let me do a control F5. So customer / enter. So if I add here shift new, some customer code, some customer amount, and if I say add customer, you can see he has cleared all the text box, and you can see that he has actually gone ahead and he has added the record to the grid, and I'm sure that the record must have also got added to the database. Nice, very nice. Everything is by Angular. Everything is happening by Angular. I'm so glad. One more improvement which I want to make on the screen is that when I go and load the screen for the first time, what happens is it does not actually load my grid. So when I go and load the screen for the first time here, very quickly, if you see, you can see that it does not load my grid here, right? So what I'll do is I'll go and create a load function here. And what this load function does is it actually makes a get call to the get customers action. So if you remember that this get customers action actually belongs to this customers class here, right? To the customer controller here, and it actually returns a collection of customers, right? So you can see that it is actually just going and loading it, and it's actually just setting the data here. And what I'll do is as soon as my program runs, right, or as soon as my UI runs here, I will go and say here $scope.load, right? So now what will happen is, the time I press enter, you can see that he should actually load my customers collection. So what is wrong here? I'm seeing all deadly signs of Angular. See, whenever Angular does not work right, this kind of sign is seen. So this indicates that Angular is not working. There is some syntax problem here. And I can see there is something called expected. What is it expected? So there is some problem. Function. Oh, the class is not closed. Okay, something went wrong there. So let us go and close the class. So this class here did not close for some reason. Okay, good. So let me go and press enter again. I think it should work, right? Where is the data? Oh, it is coming after some time. Why? Get customers. Fine. So whatever it is, you can see that the data is seen here. Definitely there is some delay. Let us check the delay later on. But the point is, what I've done here is I have created a load function here, and inside this load function I made a get call to that get customers collection, and he's actually getting me the collection of data. And then I'm calling here $scope.load. So what happens is, as soon as this UI runs, the first thing is it goes and it calls a load function, and all the data is seen down in the grid below. And then later when I go and add some new records here like this, right, it shows me these values down below in the grid. So you can see when I add, the grid is refreshing. When I come for the first time, the grid is getting loaded. Very nice. Now, one more important thing which is pending is displaying the color in the grid. Color means, basically if you remember, when you type the amount has a color, right? So it has a color coding. So if you go and type 100 or below 100, the color is red. But if you type above 100, the color is blue. So that color I would like to go and display inside this cell of customer amount. Now this grid is filled from the customers collection, right? So in other words, whenever the customers collection changes, and we have two instances, when it gets changed. First thing is when the body loads in the initialization, the customers collection is loaded. Afterwards, when you click on the add customer, again the customers collection is loaded, right? So whenever the customers collection is loaded, at whatever events they are loaded, we need to go and set that customer, the customer amount color value. So in other words, this $customers has to be watched. In other words, we have to say that watch the customers collection whenever it gets set, right? So whenever it gets set, just loop through all the customers collection and set the color. And remember, we had created a get color function. So I'm using the same get color function here. So over here, I'm saying basically whenever the customers collection is changed, right, go and loop through all the customers collection and use the amount value and set the color value accordingly. And we are using that get color function, which will help us to get the color if it is red or blue. And once this customer amount color changes, right, we also need to go and apply the style. So remember, at the end of the day, whatever is the amount color, it can be only seen, when you apply the style. So what I'll do is I'll go and apply the style on only that column that is on the TD. So you can see here, I have applied the style absolutely on that column, right? Great. So let me do a Control F5. Let us see how it looks. So we'll say here customer / enter, right? And there it is. So you can see now even the color coding is displayed on the column. Great. So when I add a record, right, it gets added. So you can see that new record has been added with the appropriate color coding. Nice. This is nice. So this brings us to the end of 1 hour long video. Must be this is a pretty boring video, but definitely a very important topic, when it comes to Angular. So in today's world, when we say we want to develop professional MVC applications, then we need to use JSON, jQuery, Angular, Knockout, Entity Framework, Dependency Injection, and so many things in order to achieve that nice and proper MVC enterprise application. So a long video, but an important video. So we are almost done with day 1 and we have more 8 hours and 30 minutes still pending. So let us keep walking these small baby steps and let us achieve our goal to become not only a MVC programmer, but a professional MVC programmer. Okay. Now here is a small sincere request. If possible, if you can go to facebook.com/questpond and if you can make an entry over there saying that, okay, I completed lab 18 and I am waiting for lab 19, or must be I completed lab 14 and I saw this. So that would help us out, to understand that how many people are following our videos and till what level they have achieved. Right. Now, after this long 1 hour video, the next video is a small, cute and a nice video which discusses MVC and polymorphism. So the next video is a relaxation video which will discuss the biggest confusion between MVC and polymorphism. Thank you so much.